All right, so today we're gonna dive into something that I think is super relevant to like almost everybody,
Yeah.
right? Especially if you're, someone who's career focused or you're trying to build a business or you just want to make sure that people really get you and what you're all about. And
Mm-hmm.
that is your personal brand.
Yeah.
We're looking at an excerpt here from LinkedIn. It's called Personal Branding, Shaping Your Professional Identity.
Great piece.
I think this is something that we all kind of struggle with, in a world where there's just so much information and so many people out there.
Yeah.
How do you stand out and how do you make sure that you're seen and remembered for what you want to be known for?
Right. And I think that's like the biggest thing, right? Like we live in an attention economy and you have to make sure that you're grabbing the right attention for the right reasons.
Absolutely. So this excerpt really dives into that. And one of the first things that it kind of hits on is this idea of being known for one thing.
Mm.
And they give some really good examples here.
Yeah.
You think of Bill Gates and immediately you think computers,
Yep.
Elon Musk, innovation,
Right.
Steve Jobs, iPhone.
And I think that is so critical because people can only remember so much about you. So when you try to be everything to everyone, you end up being nothing to no one.
Yeah,
Right.
it's so true.
So finding that one thing that you can really own, that you can be known for, I think is absolutely critical.
I'm curious from your perspective, working with so many different businesses and individuals, like, have you seen that to be true in your experience as well?
Absolutely. I mean, it's something that we talk about all the time when we're working with clients.
Yeah.
What is the one key message that you want to get across?
Hmm.
Because if someone walks away from meeting you or seeing your website or whatever it is, and they can only remember one thing, what do you want it to be?
Right.
And if you try to give them 10 things, chances are they're going to remember 0.
It's so true. And that brings up the question in my mind of like, how do you find that one thing?
Yeah.
Because I think it can be easy to feel like you're putting yourself in a box or you're limiting yourself.
Right.
But I also see the value of having that clear, concise message.
Right. It's almost like a paradox, right?
Yeah.
Because you want to be able to express all the different facets of yourself, but at the same time, you want to have that clarity and that focus.
Yeah.
And I think the source doesn't necessarily offer like a clear-cut solution,
Right.
but what I find fascinating is how this plays out psychologically. Our brains are constantly being bombarded with information.
Yeah.
Like we're just inundated with stuff all the time. And so as a defense mechanism, our brains try to simplify things.
Right.
They try to categorize things. They try to create shortcuts.
Totally.
And so when you have a clear personal brand, it's almost like you're giving people that mental shortcut.
Yeah.
You're making it easier for them to categorize you, to remember you,
Makes sense.
to understand what you're all about.
Yeah. And I think, I can't remember if I read this in this article or somewhere else, but it's like, imagine you're at a party
Right.
and you're trying to explain to someone what you do and their eyes just blaze over.
Oh, yeah.
Because you're like, well, I do this and this and this and
Yeah,
this. It's like,
exactly.
oh my gosh.
Yeah, you're this and that and the other thing.
Right.
And they're like, I don't even remember what the first thing was anymore.
Exactly. So if you can boil it down to that one thing,
Yeah.
it's so much easier for people to grasp and to remember.
Absolutely.
So that, I think, begs the question then for our listeners, if you had to think about what is that one thing for you right now?
Yeah.
If someone were to describe you, what would be that word or that phrase
That one sentence?
that sums up your personal brand? What would it be?
And I think that's a great exercise for everyone to go through because it really forces you to kind of distill down
Yeah.
all the different things that you do and all the different aspects of your personality and really come up with that essence
Right.
of what makes you you.
Absolutely. And I think sometimes that is a journey,
Yeah.
It might not be something that you just like have an immediate answer for, but it's something to really think about and explore.
Yeah. It's an iterative process for sure.
For sure. Now, this excerpt also talks about your online presence as being kind of your digital handshake, which I really love that phrase.
I love that too.
And they talk a lot about LinkedIn specifically, which makes sense because it is the platform for professional.
Absolutely. And I think having a strong LinkedIn profile is absolutely essential.
Yeah.
They talk about having a professional photo, a compelling headline,
Yeah.
making sure that your content is relevant to your industry.
Right.
All of those things are so important because That's often the first impression that people are going to have of you.
right? People are going to Google you,
Exactly.
and that's what's going to come up.
That's your first impression.
But I also think it's important to remember that it's not just LinkedIn, right?
Absolutely not.
It's your website, it's your blog, it's maybe your portfolio.
Any online space that reflects who you are professionally.
Right, like if you're a photographer, Instagram's going to be super important.
Absolutely.
If you're a writer, maybe you have a blog or you contribute to different publications.
Exactly.
So it really depends on what your field is.
Yeah.
But it's thinking about all of those different platforms as part of your overall personal brand.
Right. It's like telling a story across multiple platforms.
Mm-hmm.
And each platform has its own kind of language
Yes.
and its own etiquette.
Totally.
And so you want to be able to adapt to that.
And this excerpt actually talks about consistency being key.
Yeah. Consistency is super important.
And I think that's important because if you're sending mixed messages to people, it can be really confusing.
Absolutely.
You know,
yeah.
if your LinkedIn profile is super professional and then you go on Twitter, you're just like joking around all the time.
Yeah, it creates cognitive dissonance.
Right. It's like, who are you?
Yeah,
And so I think consistency helps build trust
definitely.
and it reinforces that brand that you're trying to create.
It helps people understand what you stand for.
Yeah, but I'm also wondering, like, is there room for adaptation?
Oh, absolutely.
Because if you're just like the same on every single platform,
You're going to come across a robot.
yeah, it's like,
Yeah.
this feels inauthentic.
Right.
Like you're not a real person.
So you want to strike a balance
Yeah.
between consistency and authenticity.
Makes sense.
You know, and I think about it as like a wardrobe.
Oh, okay.
You have your core staples that represent your style, but then you adapt those staples to different occasions.
Right.
So you might wear a suit to a job interview.
Yep.
But you're not going to wear a suit to the beach.
Okay, I like that analogy.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So it's the same thing with your personal brand. You have your core values, your core message,
Mm-hmm.
but then you adapt the way you communicate that message depending on the platform and depending on the audience.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
So I'm looking here at the author of this excerpt. His name is iEphraimBooks.
Oh, yeah.
And I think he actually does a pretty good job on his LinkedIn profile.
Yeah, he does. He walks the walk.
He does. He walks the walk.
Yeah.
He clearly positions himself as an expert in audit and financial consulting.
Mm-hmm.
He mentions that he's a published author,
Mm.
and he also does public speaking.
He's a busy guy.
He is a busy guy. And I noticed that even his hashtags are consistent.
Oh, yeah.
You know, he uses hashtag iEphraim and hashtag iEphraimBooks.
Yep. Which is brilliant
Which is so smart.
because it creates that brand consistency across platforms.
So clearly he's taking his own advice.
Yeah, he's drinking his own Kool-Aid, as they say.
That's great. I love that. So as we kind of wrap up this deep dive,
Mhm.
what would you say is like the one key takeaway you want our listener to walk away with today?
I think the biggest thing is don't leave your personal brand to chance.
Okay.
Be intentional about it.
Yeah.
You know, actively shape it. Start by identifying your one thing
Mm-hmm.
and then translate that across your online platforms.
Love it.
Adapt as needed, but remain authentic.
And I think it's so easy to think of your personal brand as something that's like out there and you don't have control over it.
Oh, yeah. People think it's just going to magically happen.
Right, but it's not. It's you're in control of your narrative.
Absolutely.
And you can really shape how people perceive you.
It's about making conscious choices.
Yeah, so to our listener, I would say, what is one action you can take today to start building your personal brand more strategically?
What's that first step?
Yeah, because there's a whole world of resources and information out there. This is just kind of a starting point.
This is just the tip of the iceberg.
Exactly. So go out there and start shaping your personal brand.
Be the CEO of your own brand.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Awesome.